Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Home Tech. I'm Seth Johnson, joined as always by Jason Griffing. Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Seth. How are you?
I'm just stumbling over my words this week, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
It happens. Well, gotta get warmed up.
Yeah. You know what? I don't have any alcohol over here this week.
That
it's
could be part of your problem.
Yeah, part of it. Just a small part. So.
Yeah. Well, I hear you're enjoying a bit of a break in the hot weather there. Finally.
Yeah. No. It's like 77 degrees, 70% humidity. It feels good. Like it's nice. I'm not like about to die here. It's supposed to get cold next week though. Like I heard that. Oh, yeah.
Define cold.
Maybe not. High of 82. High of 82.
Okay.
So that's kind of cold.
Freezing.
Yeah.
Well, we're enjoying a nice Indian summer, as they call it, here in Colorado. We've been having some beautiful weather as well. I'm back in town from Austin. Had a really great trip down there. I'm glad we were able to get together and record a show. Really nice conference. Learned a lot, met a lot of great people, caught up with some old friends. So had a good time. We've got Bruno in the live chat room asking us to talk about temperature in Celsius. I don't even know where to start. Google?
Yeah, you could Google that. Let's see.
Here we go.
Talk in Celsius, please.
23, Bruno. Is that better? That's for all our friends over the pond there. But anyways, Seth, we've got a good show. Just you and me today. We're going to talk about a number of big stories. There wasn't a ton of different stories that popped up this week, but I feel like the ones that did were significant. So we're going to get into those. Before we do, we want to send out a big thank you to our patrons, as we always do. If you're interested in learning how you can support our efforts here at the HomeTech Podcast, you can head on over to HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, that is HomeTech.fm/support. That's where you can learn about our Patreon program, and it's a way that you can support us here for as little as $1 a month. I do want to mention that we had a new patron come on board at the $5 level. So as we like to do, we wanted to give him a shout out on the air. All we got was the name CJ. And so CJ, if you're listening, I'm sure you know who you are. And thank you. We really do appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you very much, CJ. We do appreciate it. We actually had a couple of people roll in this last week at the $1 level. I mean, you can on Patreon, you can go in there and make whatever level you want out of it and put whatever number you want in, I guess. So we do appreciate everyone who did join up in the last week or two. The Slack invites did go out. I did do it this time. So
our sophisticated Slack invite automated system known as Seth.
Right. Yeah, there's probably what are those things? An acronym that we can make up for that. But yeah,
reverse engineer an acronym out of that. I'm sure we can.
Yeah. So the Slack invites are out. We do appreciate it, and thanks everybody. Also, for it looks like we have a couple in the live Slack tonight as well. So we want to thank everybody for joining us there and asking us on live air to convert from Fahrenheit to centigrade.
Yeah, making us do math on air. I
was told there'd be no math.
A bit of a challenge, but
yeah.
let's jump in here. Actually, one of the big stories we're going to touch on here that presumably most people listening to this show have heard of by the time this will air is the crack Wi-Fi exploit. And before we get into some of the details on that, we're gonna unpack that story a little bit, but it does tie in perfectly to a great picture of the week, Seth, that you found this week. I'm a big fan of this one.
Yep. Well, the Wi-Fi exploit was announced, and it's kind of a big one. And this funny guy on Twitter put a little link, an image up, and said, "Here's a workaround for it." And it's a nice little picture of what a big giant long Ethernet cable. So I thought that was pretty good. Yep.
It's there's something to be said for a hard wire. And yeah, he said, here's a workaround for the WPA2 Wi-Fi exploit. And it's a picture of what looks like a probably 100-foot Ethernet cable. Bruno, before you ask, I'm not going to convert that into meters. I'm sorry.
100 foot, 300 meters, right? Something like that. I don't know.
30.
Yeah. The other way.
Yeah,
around.
wrong way.
Wrong 10. All right. Well, see, no math. No more math.
No, yeah, we're done with math for the night.
Yep. So, yeah. So the big story this week all over the news, all over the tech news, all over forums that we were seeing. Starting Monday was this big news about this WPA2 Wi-Fi exploit that the security researchers had kind of stumbled across, so to speak.
Yeah.
They announced that they had this earlier in the year, I guess. People have known about this for quite some time, but they have just now published the details. So this is kind of like, this is how the process should work, even though with all the fantastic headlines that we saw, this is how the process works, where a white hat hacker finds an exploit, reports it responsibly. It goes out and to all of the companies that have affected products, they're supposed to start applying updates or getting patches made. And then the person discloses that information to the public. So the public's aware that there is a problem. And hopefully by then everybody knows to patch or has already been patched. So we've seen the good thing about all of this is, well, there's two good things. One, this really isn't that big of a deal. But two, this is how the process works, and it's working really well. So I'm glad to see that these guys are out there researching on this stuff and poking holes on this thing. This was actually, I think, the way I was reading it, it was somebody that was working on one of his undergraduate papers or something like that at a university, and decided to check how something worked if he sent a piece of information again. And of course, when he did that, the whole thing blew up and had a cascading failure, and he was able to kind of hack into the client's, the device's Wi-Fi and see what the device was sending over what should have been encrypted traffic.
Right.
This doesn't, I guess we should talk about kind of what this is and what it isn't. It's not like, this is not a hack. They will not get your Wi-Fi password with this. This is not a hack of any particular device. It's a hack of all devices, so to speak, but mostly it's a hack of client devices. Like, and when I say client devices, that's any device like your cell phone or a Ring doorbell or a computer, an Android tablet, anything that connects over Wi-Fi. That's a client. So it's an attack on how the Wi-Fi specification was implemented within those devices. And since they did it, if you followed the directions to the spec and did exactly how IEEE told you how to implement Wi-Fi, or this particular security thing on Wi-Fi, then you're vulnerable. So anybody who followed the directions, they did it. I think Apple and luckily Microsoft did not follow directions very well. So oddly enough, they're already patched. All their devices are patched. It looks like I know that the real patches for Apple and Microsoft, let's see, I think Microsoft already did it this Tuesday. So I think that's Guillermo there in the chat saying that was patched on October 10th. I know Apple has already really said all this new stuff is in the betas that'll be going out to developers now. So if you're on a developer, your client is 100% patched, or your phone is 100% patched. But and I noticed that a lot of the Wi-Fi access point providers have started releasing patches as well. This doesn't affect. The reason they're doing that and they're announcing that particular aspect of it is because bigger Wi-Fi, they need it for the enterprise, basically. So if you have a company like Cisco or Ruckus or Ubiquiti, these guys are going to be on top of these patches. They're going to release a security update patch for their devices. Keep an eye on your Netgear router and everything, but even then, it really is not important to update your access point as it is to update the clients that are attached to that access point. And it even goes so far, especially in a residential, go ahead and patch everything. But really what needs to happen, get out there, update all the devices that are clients, that are Android devices.
I'm probably mispronouncing that, but that is where the research originated. One thing that I thought was definitely worth noting as I was reading through these stories, because you saw all the headlines and you would have thought, it was like the end of the world as we know it type of deal, right, and it's doomsday, and it really got a ton of press. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it for the same reason. It's an important story. But one of the things that you could easily overlook if you didn't actually sit down and read through these stories in their entirety is, there's a let's see, Digital Trends is where I'm reading from, says, there is a physical security, a level of physical security, and that hackers have to be within range of your network. In other words, this is not exposing you to everyone out there on the internet. So the odds that somebody would be targeting you, it would require them to be within range, which would obviously be much more likely if you were in a place like a public place, and I guess an airport or a coffee shop or something along those lines. So
that just adds on to the security concerns you should have when you're in those places. You should always use a VPN. When you're in a coffee shop, you're not even using this. Like this would be.
That's true.
You connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi. It's open. There's no security at all on the Starbucks Wi-Fi. So like you should be using a VPN on those regardless. And if you were using a VPN and you hadn't updated your client, your phone or whatever, they could attack your phone and not see anything anyway, because it's all encrypted between your phone and the VPN. They would just see gibberish going by. So, taking the proper security measures anyway, really would protect you. This really is a story for like the IT world. The people that are in IT that are having to work on the devices, work with a bunch of devices. Like they have to make sure all their laptops within the company get updated, or somebody could theoretically walk into the lobby and somehow attack the president or CEO's computer, right? Like they could sit there and watch the traffic go back and forth that was unencrypted, watch that traffic go back and forth, and could possibly do some exploits off of that. But otherwise, like I like you were saying, I think this story was way overblown for what it was. At the beginning of the week, I thought it was like WPA2 had been hacked completely, like from what they were saying. And then as the details started to roll out, as they made up this nice site, it's not that bad. Like most of the time you're going to a website with the little lock on it, you got no problem with that. Like that's encrypted traffic. They would see gibberish going by if they hacked your phone and you went to if you went to like the banking website and it had the little lock up there, that's encrypted. So you don't have a problem. They're not going to see your banking information go back and forth free in the clear.
Right.
So I think that for the most part, this was overblown, but it does need to get updated. And I mean, this is how they get that information out there, right? They make these splashy headlines and these names like crack to catch your attention and say that, WPA2 is completely broken and what are we going to do now? But nope, it's all still working. All still works great. And just make sure that your phones get updated. I think Android has like the biggest problem because they can't update for some reason. Some of the older Android devices like don't get updated, blah, 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 blah. That is kind of like the biggest problem at this point, but I think everything else should be able to easily be updated and move on.
Right. Yeah, interesting to know. We didn't really talk about this, but the way that it works, I also thought was worth mentioning. It sounds like a fair level of sophistication required to be able to make this work. Attackers apparently they just find a vulnerable network and somehow create a carbon copy of it where they impersonate the MAC address. They're then able to change the Wi-Fi channel on that, and that new fake network effectively acts as a man in the middle, so that when a device attempts to connect to the original, it's actually forced to bypass and connect to that fake network or that rogue network. And so that's how they, that's a very, very oversimplified explanation of how the hack works. I think closing the story out, the thing that to focus on is what you've been saying, Seth, is go out and do those updates. I do think there was an interesting story in Wired about how this mess could take, quote, decades to clean up. And I think maybe overstating it a little bit, but there are some good points in that article, and I think it's worth a read because it talks about how, particularly with older devices where over-the-air updates can't necessarily be forced, and you're really relying on, these companies can release a patch, they can release the firmware or software or whatever it is they need to address the issue, but then that has to get installed on their entire base of devices, and they often have limited ways of contacting their users. If a user didn't register their device, then they're basically stuck hoping that user will see the headline, see a story, see a post in a community forum or something to that effect, and then go and take action. And even if they do decide to take action, there can often be steps that to people like you and me and the average listener of this show might seem really simple, but for your everyday consumer might in fact be too much. And so there are probably going to be devices out there that are still vulnerable to this, years from now. But companies are trying to address it. The article also goes on to talk about, they mentioned specifically Eero in the article and how they're set up to basically automatically push these updates out there whenever something like this happens.
Yep, that's one of the good things about having. Well, okay, so when we first saw this go through, there was a lot of discussion about this being like we're going to have to start calling it the Internet of Landfill, because it's going to just fill up with all these Internet of Thing devices that you're just going to have to throw away now because you can't update them or there's no patches being delivered for them. If you really step back and think about it and go over what you described, it's just a man-in-the-middle attack between an Internet of Things device. Let's use a camera as an example. Somebody would have to be at your house. They would have to be fairly competent and be able to use this hack that is fairly difficult. I mean, but they'll release how to do this later on, and people will make little programs to do it. But you'd have to have a vulnerable network with this particular camera that is vulnerable. And then all they would see from the camera, they're not going to get from the camera and go and looking through your files. They're just going to see, they'll be able to see the stream coming off the camera. So, and see that traffic going through. So they're not, I think that it's less of a big deal for the Internet of Things devices than I think people are kind of making it out to be. The good Internet of Things devices like Eero and, Ring doorbells, Arlo, the ones that connect, the Nest Drop Cam and Nest Cam, those connect out to the cloud and they'll get their firmware updates and just no one will ever know. They'll just be updated one day. And that's how it should work. And to add on to that, those particular devices are probably already using encrypted traffic out to their sources as well. So they're not just spewing bits of video information over your network. It's being encrypted, sent up to the Google servers or whatever, and from point to point. So that shouldn't be a problem either on that end. It's where you're going to see this problem, as always, is in much older equipment that is not. It's probably cheaper, I guess. It's probably inexpensive, doesn't have a brand name on it, and probably doesn't have a long shelf life, or when you purchased it, you didn't think it was going to have a long shelf life anyway. So, I think that the Internet of Landfill probably won't come to fruition anytime soon. This stuff's going to stay in people's homes and keep being used.
Yeah, it's a little bit ironic, right? Because anytime these stories break, that's always the narrative that you hear is, oh, well, we have all of these IoT devices and connected devices in the home now, and now you're hearing about these exploits, and oh my God, we're all doomed, right? But in fact, it's really a lot of the older devices that you really have to worry about, because the newer devices are built to where, literally, like Wired talks about how Eero, the second they knew about this issue, they wrote some code, did some testing, and then pushed it out, and it was automatic. Their entire base of installed devices that were connected were updated automatically. So, that, like you said, is the way that it should be. That is the way that you would hope really all IoT companies are setting up their products moving forward. That's, that's not a panacea. There are issues sometimes with those over-the-air updates that can cause funky things to happen. But ultimately, the trade-off is worth it, and knowing that as long as these companies are staying on top of security, which you would hope market pressure alone, and then hopefully increased regulation a little bit in that sense. I think there's a number of initiatives going around where they're trying to put a little bit more standardization in place. I think Underwriter Labs or UL has an initiative, and some others going on as well. So, there are people out there trying to address this problem from a big picture perspective. But ultimately, I think if you're a user, don't be alarmed, don't panic. Look for that little lock in your browser, the little HTTP with the S at the end. If you're on the web, do your updates and go on about your life. This is not the end of the internet as we know it. Everything is going to be okay.
Yep. And I think the vast majority of devices that we use every single day, like your phones and your tablets and your computers, those are going to get the updates that they need, right? So unless you're running an ancient Windows XP computer, you probably are okay. iPhone, Android, a newer Android, I guess. All that stuff is in development or in beta to be patched within a short time. So, and at the same time, like I said, this is a very sophisticated attack. It's man in the middle, so somebody has to physically be present, like you said. I would put this from being the headlines that you see like this being like a 10 out of 10. I think this is more like a 2 out of 10.
It's quite a downgrade
in the home. Yeah, in the home, like maybe even less, maybe like a 1 out of 10. But at a business, like this should be, a corporation, like a big corporate office or something. This is going to be like an 8 out of 10.
Good point.
They've really got to get on it, and it's a completely different mindset there for security and what is it like? You don't want to lose your intellectual property, from being stolen to a competitor or whatever. Like somebody could just walk into the lobby and start attacking, different computers and start seeing what's going on. Like a business is going to have to protect themselves a little bit more than you do in the home. And they're going to be a bigger target for something as sophisticated as this.
Yep. I agree. All right. Well, let's move on. We've got a handful of stories here about Amazon that we want to touch on in 3 in a row, sort of 3 consecutive stories, all from CE Pro. A good dialogue, I think, about this. The Amazon Custom Home Services Program appears to be the official name. I wasn't actually sure until this week what they were officially calling it, but this is their new partnership with Cedia, where it's effectively sort of a referral program where integrators can, Cedia certified integrators can partner up and have their company listed on an Amazon landing page where Amazon will refer, higher end customers who come into their home services program up to these people. I actually read in one of these stories, the first one we're going to talk about, according to Dan Quigley, who's one of the top guys there at Alexa Smart Home, and my understanding actually might even be a former integrator. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think he comes from this background and he works there. And apparently 2%, so they have this data, 2% of all visits made by Amazon Home Services team members, these are the Amazon employees who go out and do the lower end, simpler, do-it-for-me type of installs. 2% of these calls result in services being, it says, elevated to classification of interest, elevating the classification of interest to an integrator. I don't know what exactly that means, but the simple version is, roughly 2% of those referrals are basically not something that the Amazon employees are qualified to do. And 2% of Amazon's business is a lot. That could be quite a bit of business, and they don't want to completely turn that away. And so they've partnered up with Cedia integrators. And so the first story in this series that came out, and I believe this is the order that they came out in, but it was a piece by Jason Knott where he had an interview with Dan Quigley, and they went over some of the details. We're not going to dissect all of it, but it
seems positive.
Good conversation. Yeah, generally it was a very positive article, right? And reading it, I took away generally feels like a win-win. I've been saying that all along since I first heard about this from Amazon. I think that it's there are implications there that we'll get into, and of course everybody should be thinking about. But if I were still an integrator or I owned an integration business, I would certainly be looking at this. Definitely not turning my eyes from it just because potential ramifications of what Amazon could be looking to do long term.
Right. I mean, this article, I did read this when it first came out. I think you're right. It is the first article of this series here. And this one, like I said, I think it was positive. He calls custom integrators the new architects of the smart home, which, I don't know. He may be handing out like lip service to us, but like, I don't know. It's nice that they know that we exist, right? Like, I don't think if Apple came out with, some kind of marketplace that they would want or acknowledge that anybody else exists that could possibly put together stuff regarding Apple. Like, I'm just trying to think about companies that are the same size as Amazon doing something similar to this. It's glad to know that they know we exist, and they're cozying up to Cedia a lot more, to kind of work with the marketplace that we have, and use the talent that we have to get these jobs done. And it looks like, Amazon takes a little bit of a fee, basically, like off of every job that they pay. They collect some money, they pay a little bit out over here, they keep some, and they pay out a little bit to you. So like it seems like there could be. I haven't looked. There was some discussion this morning about this in our hub, some really good discussion, but I really haven't looked too much into it to see what exactly those fees are. But people are saying that they're low. They shouldn't.
Yeah. So here I'll jump in here, Seth, because there were a few bullet points, and up until reading this article, I didn't know any of this information either. I think it's all sort of bubbling to the surface, now. And so basically the way this is set up to work right now is Amazon will set up a landing page that'll direct a consumer to see highlights of your work. If you're an integrator and you want to be listed, you'll have a landing page. That'll, of course, have... and so you can submit photos and descriptions of your work. Of course, this is all based off a zip code, and they'll send referrals your way. So currently, there's actually no fee to be part of the program. Dealers don't have to abide by any pricing rules, so they're not dictating, what it should cost you to do a job. It does say that after December 31st, so the end of this year, 2017, CE pros will have to share a portion of their labor revenue with Amazon, which is interesting. So labor only, not equipment.
So this is different than what I was thinking we were talking about. We must be talking about two different things. The Amazon services, custom home services, and I'm probably thinking about the Amazon home services.
Yeah, could be. Those could be different things. So yeah, specifically on the custom home services, right now there's no fee, but that's for a limited time. It does say that again, after December 31st, there will be, it says the exact percentage is not yet determined, but Quigley believes it will settle somewhere around 10%. So 10% of your labor on a given job will go to Amazon basically as a referral fee. And then the last point I wanted to touch on here, none of the products installed in the job need to be purchased via Amazon. And then it does say in terms of cash flow, this is interesting, client pays Amazon for the project and Amazon remits the money to the integrator. So interesting. Some things to think through there for sure, but definitely not something to...
It just got confirmed. I was thinking about home services, not custom home services. So Two different things. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, a little bit confusing, but this is their higher end offering, and so definitely worth, I think, taking a look at. But the second in this series of articles that we're referring to is by a gentleman named Chuck Schneider. I know I've heard the name, I've seen his writing around before. I'm not super familiar with him, or don't have any sort of personal relationship with Chuck, but he's a freelance writer, has a long history in consumer electronics. I think ran a rep firm at one point, and has a background. Looks like is titled "Cedia Dealers Shouldn't Trust Amazon as Smart Home Partner," says industry veteran. So that's the title of the CE Pro piece, and not going to pick this apart in its entirety. Fairly lengthy piece, leaves no doubt in your mind as the reader what Mr. Schneider's opinion here is of Amazon, and he's very, very bearish, thinks that integrators, shouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. The very first line of the story is, "I don't trust Amazon," that's in all caps, "to do anything less than to continue to disrupt and then destroy the competition in every category it encounters." And then it goes on to make a number of arguments about why it would be a very bad idea to get in bed with Amazon, and really that they're just in this to, I guess, learn, maybe educate themselves a little bit, or he even speculates about them sending out Amazon Home employees to, quote unquote, observe the project. And I don't know if he was being tongue in cheek there, but anyways, it's worth a read. I think he makes some valid points about, for instance, talking about making sure that you have your, if you have a lawyer or legal team, like make sure that you review what you're signing and really understand what the implications are, warranties, system monitoring, service after the sale, financing, Amazon processing the payment, then remitting money to you. I mean, those are all things to me as an integrator. If I were looking at it, those would be the things I would definitely spend my time researching.
I understand his position. I understand the position that he's coming from, but this may take a little bit different mindset to look at something like this. Having the payments collected. How many of us like to send out invoices? Having them reimbursed to you and sent to you directly. How many of us like to do payroll? Like, if you step back and you think about this, like, Amazon is taking a bunch of stuff off your shoulders for that 10% that they'll be talking about. So I think this is a pretty. We were looking at some of the. I guess I'm going to go back to the home services, but we were looking at some of that and how that works. You're getting sales from that, right? You're getting leads from that. That's got to be worth something. I know integrators that pay bukus of money for integration and sales leads that don't go anywhere. Like, there's booths set up at CEDIA every year that they'll sell you a ton of leads for $5,000 a year if you want to do that. And that's those, you may hit one or two out of those a year, but this is people that are actively wanting something to go into their house. They're going on Amazon saying, I want to buy this. And they're selecting and hitting a button to say, buy this. So I think that this is a pretty good deal, if you ask me. Like, and you get all the back end services of running a business. Okay. Like, that doesn't sound too terrible to me. You may have to sacrifice, as a business owner, you may have to sacrifice some independence. Some of the way that you've done things may have to change. But I don't think in this changing market, we can very much afford to be that resistant to so much change. Like, we've been talking about this for a long time. Like, how is this energy industry changing? What's it going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years? And I'm still of the opinion, like, this thing is going to look almost exactly like the IT industry. I mean, where are the mom and pops IT stores? There aren't very much of those anymore. If people want a computer, they don't go down to John and have one put together over at the mom and pops IT store. No, that store's gone. They just go down to the Apple store and buy one off the shelf and walk out the same day. So these, I'm sure there, and to add on to that, there's businesses that need custom computers put together. They're not going to go to Apple and buy one off the shelf. They're going to go to where John, the IT guy, or John, the computer builder guy, may have gone after his business closed down. He may have gone to a corporate IT company or something that serves bigger markets. And that's where I see our industry kind of like transitioning and moving. You're going to see some guys go to commercial. You're going to see some guys go to like high-end homes and just like set up their tents around those big high-end homes. That stuff's not going away. But if you have the opportunity to kind of like get involved with this new market, see how it is, I don't see that there's any downside at this point in time. Amazon's trying to figure this out. Clearly, I mean, they're throwing some serious money at this. So why not get in and see what it's like, and take advantage of the situation?
Right. Yeah. I think put your toes in the water at least and figure out if it makes sense for your business. I can say that, with Amazon controlling the payments, I think the one thing that I don't know how, I don't have a sense for how large these projects are actually going to get, but I think about some of the projects that I've been a part of when I was an integrator that were $60,000, $100,000, $250,000 projects. I don't know how many of those are going to be going through. If you get a lot of money tied up in some of those bigger projects, and then for some reason there's a dispute between you and the builder or you and the client about where you're at in terms of progress, and you're trying to collect a progress payment, it's one thing to be sort of working through that with a homeowner or a local builder. It's a whole nother thing to be trying to work through that with a company like Amazon. So that would worry me a little bit. Without reading the fine print, it's hard to say what that really looks like in terms of those larger projects. But if they're holding all the money on a very large project until the end, and you're not getting paid until then, I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But I'm probably thinking about the high end of it.
Yeah, I don't get that this is going to be $100,000 jobs are going to run through Amazon. I have a feeling, just looking at what they're selling through the Amazon Home Services, that this is going to be like, I want the TV mounted on the wall and the soundbar mounted on the wall under the TV, and I want the wires hidden.
Yeah,
and maybe these things will top out at $5,000. I don't think that you're going to be out of a lot of capital to float these kind of jobs. And we were discussing in the Slack channel this morning, like, I think this would be a great place to throw your green guys, like that you hire the new guys off the street. They just want to get into they just want to get into to the custom integration. They don't really know what it's all about. Put these guys on those jobs. Have them learn what customer service is, and have them learn what they're going to be wiring homes eventually to put these things in. Every job I've ever started at, they always want you to start, as a wire monkey and pulling those wires to those hot attics. And it's like, if you don't have it in you to get through that and try and like move on and move yourself up, and in most cases, in most of the small businesses, you can't even move up because there's nowhere to move to. Like, there's really, it's a really tough job. Like, you're looking at pulling wire for 10, 20 years. Like, that doesn't sound very fun. There's no upward mobility in that.
Sure doesn't.
No. So like, get in there, get your new guys involved with, figuring out how to please a customer that bought stuff off Amazon and wants it put in. That's a trick. And if they can do that, they can do just about anything. So I think, and when the wiring jobs eventually go away, because we all know that they'll go to the electricians eventually, you'll have a nice little service company set up with guys that are really good at customer service. Yeah,
that's an interesting way to look at it. I haven't heard anyone talk about that before, and I missed the conversation on the hub today. But I think there are a lot of creative ways you could look at this. I do think that the jobs, the idea of this custom home services is to get into the bigger jobs. I think $5,000 may be a common one, but I do anticipate that there will be projecting a TV and programming a remote. I think that's more like home services stuff, and this is really getting into more of the world of actual custom integration. So time will tell. I do think now's a good time to get into this third article where Julie Jacobson came back and did a counterpoint, sort of refuted some of the Chuck's article, that there are some good points in there. Yes, you should, cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure you're, having an attorney or an accountant figure out if there are any areas you're not 100% sure what you're signing. Go into it eyes wide open, know what you're getting into. But her point I wholeheartedly agree with is, she says, if we were to say no to every new opportunity just because someday in the future it will no longer work for us, we wouldn't get very far, right? And so what company doesn't shift gears, she goes on to say. It's like, yes, we all know that Amazon is in it for Amazon, and that ultimately the day could come where if they chose to, they might be able to. This point is the right one, which is take a good hard look at it, understand what you're getting into. Don't dismiss it outright just because of what Amazon might do someday. There may be opportunities here for you right now, based on the current state of your business and what the company is providing. And so do the math, figure out if it's right for you, and then if it is, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, these jobs may not pay that much, or you're going to get 10% chopped off the top. Stick a little, stick one of the learners on there, the guys that get paid low out there to do these. And it may start making more sense. I think I've used this example before. Everybody remembers when everybody wanted to be a DirecTV installer, and you could make bukus of money off of selling DirecTV. And then all of a sudden the switch got flipped. The independent installers all just went away, couldn't make money anymore. And that rarely, you rarely see anybody like really taking that on, other than the guys that are just, doing it out of a white van with a couple ladders strapped on top.
Right.
So this is definitely one of those opportunities. And I would think if it works, I mean, Amazon's going to put a little more marketing in their marketing budget than I think any integrator is going to. So if they're getting involved with this and they want to do something, they want to do it right, they've got the money to do it. Yeah, very true. To your point about DirecTV, I happen to know, I've had conversations with a couple of people who made a lot of money in the heyday of DirecTV, and they really took advantage of it while the getting was good. And as long as you weren't in a position where your entire business was reliant on that model, then right. Then you came out okay. So I would say the same, similar parallels apply here. But let's move on. Next story is related only in the sense that it's an Amazon story. We're shifting gears here a little bit to Amazon's decision to incorporate Zigbee into the Echo Plus as opposed to Z-Wave. I know when this story initially broke,
a couple of weeks back, we had a brief conversation about that decision to use Zigbee, and I still think there are some merits and probably some very deliberate reasons why they did that. I don't think Amazon is the type of company who would have made an uninformed decision there. So I'm sure they had their very specific reasons. But this is IoT consultant Avi Rosenthal. Name very familiar probably to most of our listeners. I think hear his name a lot in these CE Pro stories, and he talks about a number of reasons why Z-Wave might have been a better choice. Bigger install base of devices, more interoperability. Talks about the S2 security framework and how that is arguably a superior offering to what Zigbee has. But I think ultimately, again, Amazon had to make a decision here, an informed decision. I can't imagine that they didn't do their homework and figure out what made more sense for them. I know that Zigbee is really widely used in like more, I would say, curated type of collections, like Xfinity Home, for example, is based off of Zigbee. And so perhaps there's an angle there where they're really looking to have a more tightly curated, arguably more controlled, I guess is probably not the right word, but just a different approach. Z-Wave, very, very much a very popular technology, very common with, DIY and also increasingly making moves into the professional space. And I know they've always had a good presence at CEDIA. And so I think interesting thought exercise to speculate why Amazon went one way versus the other, but who knows? Maybe they'll come out with a Z-Wave Echo device sometime in the future.
Yeah, I read this article and I thought it was interesting. I don't agree with his conclusion of that it was the wrong decision by Amazon. Simply because, I mean, one of the big arguments here is that there are hundreds of Z-Wave devices. Like if you go on Amazon and you search for Z-Wave, you'll find a ton of Z-Wave devices that all work with whatever Z-Wave they're attached to, right? And that's the big deal with Z-Wave is that it's interoperable with like other devices. Anything that says Z-Wave, it should work. And Zigbee has kind of like different flavors, so to speak. I know that they have been trying to make it work more like Z-Wave, but you can still lock it down and kind of sprinkle your own magic on top of it and make it your own if you wanted to. That's really up to the manufacturer. And he's saying he's made the wrong decision because of that. Like, but maybe they didn't. Like, maybe Amazon has longer term plans than just connecting to 700 million devices or whatever that Z-Wave is selling. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they want their own lighting switch. Maybe they want their own thermostat. Like I think this is $1 billion company we're talking about here. This isn't some random Silicon Valley startup. If they want to make a Z-Wave thermostat that works wherever the Amazon Echo does, they can make it and they can push it out, and it will be on a massive web store. Like I really don't understand. I really don't understand the thinking that went into this article that made them land on Z-Wave because there's more devices. I don't get that. The Z-Wave S2 security framework, that's nice, but I mean, Zigbee's been encrypted as well for a while. It's not UL. I think the S2 could be UL certified. But I mean, it's a certification process. If Zigbee wants to get that done, and they have a customer big enough like Amazon, they can probably get that done, right? So I just don't see those little like bullet points being a very compelling reason for Amazon being wrong on this. Like I just don't understand. I don't understand the reasoning behind that. And not to top it all off, like I've worked with both Z-Wave and Zigbee devices, and Zigbee, they work better typically. They tend to be more expensive, but they tend to work better. And they tend to be more reliable. I mean, Control4, Crestron, those are the two manufacturers that are huge manufacturers in our industry that use Zigbee. They probably picked it for a different reason too. So I would keep that in mind. Like it may not be that numbers were what they were looking at. They may have been looking at quality And I don't really, I can't really say like Zigbee's better than Z-Wave. I'm not going to go and say that the quality's better, but I can say that the products that I've worked with that are Zigbee are a little bit better than the products that I've worked with Z-Wave.
Yeah. And I think it's safe to say they weren't, throwing darts at a dartboard and, picking their technology. So surely their homework went into it. I think it's an interesting read. And like I said, a sort of a thought exercise, but I agree with you, Seth. I think there could be any number of reasons why they went with Zigbee, and they've certainly got no shortage of money if they do decide they want to incorporate Z-Wave. That would not be a difficult thing for them to do. But let's move on here. A series of stories we're going to close out the episode with related to streaming video. And this first one is a new service called Movies Anywhere. And Seth, I know you picked out a couple of stories about this one. I saw some headlines as well, but I know you were pretty excited about this one. So I'm going to hand this over to you here.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. This is similar to a product that Disney announced a couple of years back that I didn't really get my head wrapped around until now. But my wife's actually been using it for all the Disney movie purchases that you get. You can go to this website, and if you purchase them in the store, you type in the iTunes code or whatever, it ends up on this website that's a Disney Vault website or something. But it also ends up in your iTunes library, like the digital copy of it. This service basically takes that and just multiplies it out. So it takes all the online movie purchases you pretty much bought anywhere and puts them in one place. We're talking about Amazon Live Video, Amazon Instant Video, Google Play, Vudu, and iTunes. All those movie libraries get combined into one place, regardless of where you made the original purchase. And it works across studios too. So not just Disney studios, but Fox, Sony, Universal, Warner Brothers are all involved. I think this is huge. This is great for the streaming services and cord cutters. I would totally get on board with this. I think I read in this article that it starts here in the U.S. only. So yeah, U.S. only, and it's going to be hopefully rolled out worldwide later. But I think this is great. This is the integrations that we want, right?
Yeah, no, it looks really cool, and that's always been one of the big challenges with cutting the cord and streaming video in general is that segmentation that you get, and you've got different content on different apps, and for the more technically inclined people, that's not a huge deal. But when you have a casual viewer in the house who doesn't want to memorize 20 different apps, that can be a real pain point. So I think aggregation apps like this, where you can have all of your different subscriptions, but they're bringing all of that into one place, so that you don't have to remember, okay, I go and I watch Stranger Things on Netflix, and then if I want to watch Empire, I go to my Fox app on the Apple TV, and if I want to watch this, I go to HBO Now. And like, the sooner we can get away from having to remember and having everything in those silos like that, the better in terms of the overall cord cutting experience. So I think this is great, really cool offering.
Yeah. There's a couple links we'll put in the show notes, which will be at HomeTech.fm/183. One is an article here from The Verge that basically tells you how to use all the features that Movies Anywhere offers. I would definitely check that out. It goes feature by feature, service by service, and tells you what to do. And then another one, I thought there's a pretty cool tip that somebody posted online over at Apple Insider, how you can convert your physical Blu-rays and DVD movies back into iTunes and Vudu and Movies Anywhere. So Vudu has had this service for a long time where you could take a physical disc, whether it be like a DVD or Blu-ray, and they will charge you $2 for the SD copy, so that's a DVD, and $5 for an HD copy or a Blu-ray of a Blu-ray or an upconverted copy of a DVD to a Blu-ray. So you get those. It costs you some money, but you get those. You put them into your Vudu service, get the Movies Anywhere, and then they're available over there in iTunes or Amazon or Google Play, wherever you want them to be. But they're legitimate copies that'll be over there in iTunes purchases now. So I think that's great. That's a really cool tip. It costs a little bit of money to do, I suppose, if you had a bunch of movies. But I've been ripping movies for a long time here at the house, and I'm still not done. And I can say that maybe I should have paid $2 per disc or $5 per disc just to get them in iTunes and just call it a day.
Yeah, just have it done. No, really, really cool offering. Definitely go check out those links in the show notes. I can't recall if you mentioned this, Seth. That's HomeTech.fm/183 if you want to go check those out. Looks like a really cool offering. Speaking about streaming video here, Netflix, the big name in streaming video, the pioneer there, doing very well. Announced another 5.3, says Netflix adds another 5.3 million subscribers as stock price reaches an all-time high after Q3 earnings. So they posted $2.99 billion in revenue for Q3, which beat expectations. It says they added 850,000 new subscribers in the U.S. and 4.45 million internationally, which, quote, crushed expectations of 784,000 and 3.62 million, respectively. I'm reading from GeekWire here. So company doing very, very well. I think it's a great story. They've really expanded into a lot more original programming. That's really become the big thing now, and it used to be Netflix doing it sort of. I think they kind of pioneered that, and now of course Amazon does it, and Apple's looking to get into it. So it's kind of a renaissance here, a new age in streaming video, and to have all of these options, I think is really cool. I know that interestingly there was a story that Joey, who I work with at OneVision, did in residential systems, and Seth, I'll find a link so we can include it in the show notes, and it'll be one for the pros in the audience. But some interesting parallels with what's been going on with Netflix and sort of the dichotomy between their legacy clients and their new clients, right? So there was a story about Reed Hastings, the CEO, wrote a letter to shareholders, and they did have apparently an appreciable amount of subscriber attrition following a series of price hikes. So they lost a number of subscribers, and he kind of talks about how they anticipated that, but it hasn't been a problem with their signing up of new customers, clearly, as we see by this story. And so really it's to me more a matter, and that's what the story's about that Joey wrote of it's not a question of they're raising their price and losing people because the new customers don't see the value. It's really these legacy customers who just have preconceived notions about what the service should cost, and nobody likes the price to go up. But some interesting parallels there that Joey makes to some of the battles in our industry that are going on with people working on monetizing service and RMR contracts and things of that nature. So worth a read for the pros in the audience. But coming back to Netflix, I think it's great to see. I'm a fan of Netflix personally, and it looks like they're doing very, very well.
I'm a fan as well. I think October we're coming up on Stranger Things season, so we'll have a whole new season of Stranger Things to watch. I know they just raised their price by $1 for their plans, so maybe that's one of their stock prices going up as well. But I saw that it's actually in this article here, but I saw that that they're going to spend $7 to $8 billion next year on new content. So it's either original content or what they're collaborating with studios to purchase. $7 to $8 billion. That's a whole heck of a lot of money.
That's a big number.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think Apple said they were going to spend $1 billion on original content too, which is a big number, but 7 to 8. I mean, that's a bigger number. Much bigger number.
I thought we said that we weren't going to do any more math.
Yeah. Oh. Whoops.
Anyways. Moving on here, last story we want to touch on, Amazon Prime Video, and this is a quick one. It's really just a rumor, but worth updating in case it's true. I know generally people are excited about the story that Amazon Prime Video will purportedly soon be coming to Apple TV. We've heard about that for a little while. We've been talking about it here on the show. According to a Reddit thread, it appears that October 26th could be the day that this happens. Again, we're going off even Reddit. This is reported by, we were reading from Digital Trends. They were reading from Mac Rumors. So, this is making the rounds here in the Apple rumor mill. So very unverified source, but it's his name on Reddit is Amazon Video Engineer. It's been a Reddit account.
Oh, it must be official then.
Yeah. So who knows? This could be totally false. But
oh my God.
Listen to this. Has an account for 13 days. and appears to have created it just to post a thread called "The Truth About Amazon Prime Video on Apple TV." So if this is somebody just trying to spark a rumor, they did a great job. If there's any truth to it, then it's exciting. I know that Apple TV users are excited for this. I'm included amongst them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal if I know the exact date or not. I know that they announced at WWDC and at the later event that they had that there was where they announced the new Apple TV. I think they announced that they would have Amazon coming on board. So I'm excited about just having Amazon. If they want to take their time and get it right and launch 4K content or whatever, that's all well and good. But right now I have to switch over to switch over to the TV and use the app that's built into the TV. Yeah, and
awful.
Yeah, it is. It is awful. Like I'm so ready for it to be on my Apple TV or all in one place.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be a much better user experience, and especially again for users like you who are tech savvy, and like most listeners to this show, presumably not a huge deal. You're obviously saying like an animal in jest, but I think about in my household, and my wife would probably pick that up pretty quickly, but it would be one of those pain points to adoption, right? To getting everything smoothed out as I bring in this new technology into the home, which is obviously a critical process. So exciting to see. But that is it for this week's show. We look forward to getting some guests on soon. I am getting back into booking mode. So if you are listening to the show and you've got a company or a product that you'd be interested in coming on and featuring, don't hesitate to reach out. You can use our website to do that. HomeTech.fm/feedback, I believe it is the way to do that. So HomeTech.fm/feedback. And also you can reach us on Twitter at HomeTech Podcast. So I want to thank everybody again for tuning in this week.
I guess that's the show this week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good, Seth. Take care.